Tamim ad-Dari says when he was a younger man that he was in a ship of around 30 people from the tribe of Judham and Lukham. These are Christian Arab tribes up north, and he was from those tribes. And once a very severe storm came in the ocean, and for 30 days they were lost at sea. After there were 30 days, they were lost at sea. They had no clue where they were until they came to a faraway, ocean that they could not recognize, and they saw an island in the distance. So some of them, Tamim ad-Dari and a few of them, took the smaller boat to go get some water, to go get some food. So every large boat has that small boat to go in. So they took that smaller boat to go to that island, and when they landed on that island, they met a very terrifying animal. A beast that could speak to them, a dabba that could speak to them. And we'll mention the dabba when we come to one of the 10 signs. The dabba that could come to them. And this beast was unrecognizable. Like, call him what? Bigfoot or something, Frankenstein, whatever. Not Frankenstein, sorry, scratch that from the record. Bigfoot, not Frankenstein. I guess in our cultural folklore, closer to the Bigfoot. Although the hadith did not describe him. It simply says, a beast that's very hairy. Just nothing but hair, and could speak. And Tamim saw this and his people, and they were terrified. And the beast said, come with me. I'm going to take you to my owner or my master. And they went to this island, and they went to this cave where they saw a man larger than any man they have ever seen. And the man was tied up in a more severe manner than any man they have ever seen. And the man then began to ask a number of questions. And it goes like, 10 questions or so. I'm not going to go into all of them. And they were so terrified, they just responded one after the other. And until in the end, the last question was, of the questions, the Tabariya Sea, is it still there? This well, is it giving water? This land, is it still cultivated? And they answered yes, yes, yes. And always the answer was, a time will come when there shall be no water in that lake. A time will come when this well will be dry. A time will come when this land that you consider to be very beautiful and green will be completely barren. So he's giving predictions in the future. Then he says that, has the Ummi Prophet been sent amongst the Arabs? Has that Prophet been sent amongst the Arabs? And Tamim ad-Dari at this time was a Christian, but he was an Arab. He knows the Prophet has come. So he says, yes, he has been sent. And he has come out from Mecca, and he has settled in Yathrib. Because he didn't call it Medina, because only Muslims called it Medina. For those 10 years when Islam was spreading, Yathrib and Medina were the same name, as you know, the same city. And the Muslims called it Medina. And the Munafiqun and the pagans called it the old name, Yathrib. And that is why we are not allowed as Muslims to call it Yathrib unless we describe it that this is the pre-Islamic name. In any case, because the Prophet said they call it Yathrib and it is Medina. They call it Yathrib, so we do not call it Yathrib as a name. In any case, so Tamim ad-Dari said he has settled in Medina. The Dajjal says, did the Arabs fight him? They say yes. So he says, who won? They say, sometimes he wins and sometimes the Arabs win, meaning the Uhud. Uhud they say was a loss, even though Uhud was not a loss. From our perspective, Uhud was a stalemate. It was not a loss, but the Quraysh interpreted it as a loss. Dajjal then said, if there is good in the Arabs, they should follow him. And I will tell you about me. I am the Masih. And it is only a matter of time before I am let loose. And when I am let loose, I shall visit every single city on earth in 40 days, except for Mecca and Medina, for they are made haram for me. Every time I come to them, the angels will stop me. Then the Prophet ﷺ stopped his lecture, and he began poking on the mimbar, like this to emphasize. And he said, this is Tiba, this is Tiba, this is Tiba. Did I not tell you about the Dajjal? And they said, yes, you did. Now this hadith ends over here. Now, this hadith is the famous hadith of Tamim ad-Dari, narrated by one Sahabiya, Fatima binti Qais. And it is in Sahih Muslim, and its chain appears to be authentic. Now, this hadith has caused This hadith has caused a lot of controversy in the ummah. Why and how? Because it throws a spanner in what we seem to know about the Dajjal. Other traditions mention that the Dajjal will come towards the end of times. They mention he shall be born to parents who were childless for many, many years, and they're making dua for a child, and they shall be given a child, and they will not recognize that it is the Dajjal. The hadith that we just mentioned about Hafsa says the Dajjal will come out and appear because of some anger issue. Something happened that made him angry. Whereas this hadith seems to throw all of that to the wind. And the Dajjal is alive and healthy, he's tied up, he knows he's the Dajjal, etc., etc. And because of this, this leads us to a very deep issue. Is it allowed to problematize hadith based upon the content and not based upon the chain? You understand this question? Is it allowed for scholars, I'm not talking average person, for scholars who understand, hadith scholars, to problematize a hadith because the content seems different? And the vast majority of scholars said no. And for good reason. Because if you open this door, then it will never be shut. If you open this door, then every Tom, Dick and Harry, or I should say Tahir, Dawood and Harun, will come and say, oh, I don't understand this hadith. As we have people in our times, munkir hadith, as we know, right? You know, I'm not going to mention his, but there are people that deny hadith in our times and whatnot. And we are, alhamdulillah, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And the meaning of Sunni or Ahl Sunnah means what? We follow Sunnah. The term Sunni, what does it mean? We are defined by our clinging to the Sunnah. By definition, anybody who says they're Sunni means what? We're following the Sunnah. Anybody says we don't follow the Sunnah, they are from another firqa. Go ahead and call yourself another firqa. You are no longer mainstream. You are no longer Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So anyway, what was I saying? Is it allowed to problematize hadith based upon the content? The vast majority of scholars said no. A very small handful said yes, with a lot of conditions. And this is not the time to go into that. But one of those conditions, and I like this, one of those conditions is the problematization should not come from your mind or logic or rationality. It should come because it seems to be clashing with other ahadith. You understand this point, right? If the problem seems to come with a clash from within the tradition, that is different than when you say, oh, my mind doesn't understand the hadith. Because if you open this door, then out the window. As Ali radiallahu anhu said, that if the hadith or if the aql, if the sharia were to be based on my aql, the masah over the socks should be done on the bottom. But I saw with my eyes the Prophet ﷺ do masah on the top. Memorize this, a very beautiful tradition, by the way, very beautiful tradition. If our religion were to be based on what I think, on my aql, on my common sense, then when you do masah, where should you do masah? On the bottom. But Ali radiallahu anh said, I saw the Prophet do masah on the top. When it comes to the deen, قال الله قال رسوله سمعنا وأطعنا. Whether we understand or not.